Hey guys, what's up? Mike here, and today I've got another theory video on the 7 deadly sins. And last week's video, it was on the 10 commandments, and this video is going to be on the goddesses, and a little bit more on the goddess history and what exactly happened in the war 3,000 years ago between the goddess and the 10 commandments, and even before that. So, and another quick disclaimer before I start this video. It's not going to be one concrete theory just like last time. It's going to be a lot of theorizing and ideas on what I think will happen and what I think has happened and what I think that means for the future of 7 deadly sins. So saying that, we can get into it right now. So right off the bat, I'm going to start with the goddesses. And with the latest introduction of the celestial realm in chapter 206, it got me really thinking about what that means for the history of the goddess clan. And then I got thinking more about the motives behind the goddess clan and even the motives behind the 10 commandments. And that's going to be a lot of this video. It's going to be based on why they did that, why they're having the war, and what the war was for, what the goal was, and what led to that even. So in the chapter, the goddesses explain that the war is basically so that not only can they wipe out the demon clan, who they think are scum and don't belong on the earth, along with most of the other races, I'm assuming. Besides that, they want to obtain the land for themselves. We know there's abundant magic power in the land, and all the other races are taking it up when they're surviving. So if the only ones left are the angels, I'm assuming that they're going to be able to absorb this magic power somehow and release their constituents or their comrades from the celestial realm. And that's what we found out in our latest chapter. So we find out that the war is kind of in a way to win, obviously to get all the magic power, but also to bring back some comrades or other angels that they have in the celestial realm. And it gets you wondering, who do they have there? And why are they able to go there now? Because we see that Gauther says to Narabasta, oh yeah, we're going to go there. We're going to go to the celestial realm. So it seems like the angels in our current world are able to travel to the celestial realm, but the people there are not able to travel back. So when they get enough magic power, they're going to be able to release that gate and let them through. So going on about the gate, you gotta wonder, first of all, why do the Goddess Clan have all of these comrades or whoever behind this gate or stuck there? One, were they sealed? Or two, were they killed? And I'm gonna go and start with two, because if we're assuming that they're killed and that they're a bunch of dead comrades in the celestial realm, we can assume it's like purgatory. So when we meet the devil, or the demon king in purgatory, he says, life, just because life does not end after death, does not mean you have to be so cocky, Meliodas. So we realize that life doesn't actually end after death in the 7 deadly sins world. You either go to the purgatory or you go to the celestial realm, possibly. And that's what I'm gonna kind of theorize about right now. If the celestial realm is in fact an afterlife, that means that the angels or the goddesses have been trying to revive past comrades. And that means that they had to have ended up there somehow. So that's going to go back to what I'm going to talk about in a minute, is the fact that there was a war before the First Holy War, or some sort of miniature battle that ended with the goddesses currently, or the more powerful goddesses, or, you know, back in the day, way before, you know, maybe even 6,000 years ago, who knows, they're dead, and they ended up in that, you know, celestial realm. And that's one theory, although it's very, very unlikely. Now, the second part of that is the fact that, you know, maybe how that happened was a war with the Demon King. And that kind of ties back into the first part I was talking about, when I mentioned it was either they were dead or that it was sealed away. And now I'm going to get into the point where the Goddess Clan might be sealed away in the celestial realm. So after going over that first possibility of the goddesses that the Goddess Clan is fighting for in the flashback arc of possibly being dead, I'm going to get into the one where they possibly have been sealed there. And that seems much, much more likely. Just because, mainly, I think that you can't bring back the dead. And I think that works either way, unless you're, you know, cursed like Meliodas, who is able to reincarnate. I don't think that either the goddesses or the demons or any race is able to unseal a pathway to the dead, no matter what. So this gate is more likely than not some sort of gate to a sealed world of angels. You can compare this sealed world of angels, if you want to call it that, to the coffin of eternal darkness that the 10 Commandments were in. And the only way that they can get released is by someone on the outside interfering or giving them enough magic power, as we see the goddesses fighting for, to ultimately come out and be released. Now, if we're going to go with the fact that they've been sealed in there, or the theory, sorry, that they've been sealed in there, that means that somebody must have sealed them in there in the first place. And not only those original goddesses, but the goddesses after the First Holy War. Something happened there that made all of those goddesses get sealed away. And I'm going to go ahead and point out the fact that it was after the Ten Commandments were sealed away, because in a certain chapter, when Denzel gets taken over by the goddess, we have the goddess say, you know, oh, you 10 Commandments should have been sealed away. And I'll try and put it up on the screen for you if I can. But it shows that the Ten Commandments were already sealed away before the goddesses were, and they were the cause of the Ten Commandments being sealed away in the coffin of darkness. So it wasn't any, dark horse that came in and took over the war and kind of sealed them both away. It was the goddesses who sealed away the Ten Commandments. And now that leads to the question, who sealed away the goddesses after the Ten Commandments were sealed away? To answer that question, we're going to have to look at our characters left over after the seal. So once the Ten Commandments are all gone, we kind of just have our Meliodas and our goddess clan left. And that kind of leaves only really one answer, and that points right towards Meliodas. He was able to seal the goddess clan somehow. And that leads to some interesting thoughts. So if we're going to go for the idea that Meliodas is the only one that's really liable for sealing the goddess clans away, I mean, we're kind of going to scratch out Elizabeth right now, because that it is a possibility that Elizabeth had a huge part in it, because she could be one of the archangels. But I'm going to go ahead and say that Meliodas also played a huge part in it. And I think that maybe the both of them together worked to seal away the goddess clan after the demon clan was sealed away. But you gotta wonder the whole motive behind Meliodas' brain and what's up with him. So in our series, we've seen Meliodas do tons of crazy, abnormal things. For the most part, he's just a normal demon. But then again, there's also another side of him that's just a really nice guy and an innocent person. So this demon side that we see, even in the most recent chapters, we see his evil side come out, and it's completely ruthless. It just wants to kill everything, and that's very opposite from the Meliodas that we see. And we know that every time Meliodas dies, his emotions are drained by the Demon King, but his emotions are originally good and have a good intent, and that makes you wonder, why is Meliodas so good-hearted when he's the son of the Demon King? And you can say the same thing for Esterosa and Zeldarus, because we know that Esterosa himself, he has got no hate in his heart, and we know that Zeldarus, he isn't a bad guy completely, because he gave the vampires mercy, and he almost fell in love the same way that Meliodas did. And I'll try and put that up on the screen too if I can. But that makes you really wonder, is there something different about these three brothers, these three children of the Demon King? Why are they not evil and ruthless the same way we suppose that the Demon King is? And I have an interesting theory on why that is. Meliodas, Esterosa, and Zeldarus possibly have a mother. And when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. There's been no evidence to support that. But when you really think about it, there is a possibility that it exists, and it hasn't been heavily foreshadowed because it's going to be such a big reveal. Obviously, that's not enough evidence to prove that it exists, but I'm going to get into that right now. So even though it's possible, it's highly unlikely that Meliodas was just born from a single entity of the Demon King. We don't know much about the Demon King, we don't know much about how demon reproduction works, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's highly unlikely that he was just born out of a man. And same with the Zeldarus and Esterosa. I'm going to go ahead and assume that there was a mother involved, or some other, part to play. And I'm going to assume that either A, the Demon King was a goddess, or B, he had a wife who was a goddess, or is the main goddess. And I think that would be really interesting. Now at this point, it does seem like kind of a stretch that Meliodas has a mother, and that in the previous years, his mother and the Demon King had a falling out, and eventually went their separate ways, and split up into goddess and demon, and then eventually fought with each other, causing both the Demon King to be killed, or to the point where he needs to regain enough strength to leave the purgatory. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that if this mother does exist, she's in the same similar state. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about why Meliodas has his motives now. So we realize Meliodas switched over from the demon clan to the goddess clan. But we realize the goddess clan is actually kind of evil too. So why did he do this? Why did he switch from the somewhat good side to the just worse side? And yeah, the demons aren't good, but they're not bad either necessarily. They're just victims at this point in the war, kind of. I'm not going to say the same thing for the Demon King, although 10 Commandments are kind of separate from the Demon King. But either way, we're wondering why Meliodas would go over to the Goddess Clan when they're both evil. And I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that it's Elizabeth. And Elizabeth was the main reason why he chose the lesser of two evils. I mean, they're both bad, and he realizes, and if he does know about his mother, he probably knows that she was almost just as bad as the Demon King. And I'm going to go ahead and say that she was manipulative, she was evil, and she was a lot similar to Lucidel, or Rucidel, or however you say it. And that's why Meliodas, he kind of just had to choose one side no matter what, the demon or the goddess, and he chose the goddess because that was the side that Elizabeth was on. Now this may all seem like a mess at this point of video, but I hope it's coming together for you when I add in a few facts upcoming here. So when we look back at the evidence for, you know, Esterosa, Zeldarus, and Meliodas possibly being related to a goddess person, we look back at their armor, and Meliodas has had the goddess symbol is on his armor for a while now. And you can theorize that that was just because he was part of the goddess back in the war. He transferred over to their sides during the war, and maybe he got this armor and kept it since then. Okay, but then we go back to a scene that a lot of people may have actually missed. On chapter 113, when Elizabeth has a short dream, and Esterosa appears in the dream. And she's looking for Meliodas, and Esterosa appears in goddess armor as well, and he has a couple of goddess symbols on his armor. And honestly, that's kind of enough evidence that I need to point Esterosa in the direction of also being a goddess. And I'm just going to go with the fact that Zeldarus also just has a kind-hearted side. There's not a lot of evidence to support that he's with the goddesses either. The fact that Zeldarus is so young and he showed up around the end of the Holy War, or sorry, the beginning of the Holy War 3,000 years ago, we can solidly assume that, you know, he wasn't part of the whole goddess thing while Meliodas and Esterosa were alive back in the day, before the war. But he has the same demeanor and same kind of good personality that Meliodas and Esterosa have, along with the goddess symbols that the two brothers had. It makes it more likely for this theory to be, you know, somewhat true. Another point that suggests, you know, Meliodas wasn't kind of aware of all of this while the Holy War 3,000 years ago was going on, is that, you know, when he switched over to the Goddess Clan, and the Goddess Clan then sealed the demons away, he somehow ended up with the hilt of the sword for the Coffin of Eternal Darkness after this whole thing transpired. So when you're looking for the answers on how the goddesses got sealed away, you can probably look towards Meliodas, just for the simple fact that he has this hilt after it happens. So the main point that I'm trying to make here is that Meliodas was kind of the last one left standing after the original Holy War 3,000 years ago. And that's what I'm going to theorize as my main point in this video. Meliodas kind of had a grasp on what was going on, and he was kind of the, you know, overall winner of the war 3,000 years ago. And that's what brings us to today. Another point about the goddesses that I would actually like to add is if we look back at chapter 187, we see Denzel, who has been taken over by Narrabasta. And Narrabasta is kind of explaining to Derriere, once she gets caught in a sticky situation, as in aka about to die, she explains to her that, you know, oh, we're sorry, we shouldn't have killed your children, and we shouldn't have broke that pact 3,000 years ago, blah, 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 blah. And so now that kind of gives us a gateway towards the demon's motives. And the demon motives, we know, obviously, was revenge for this pact that the goddesses so-called broke. And that was mainly why the demons kind of made their attack. They didn't really do it out of pure malice. They did it for revenge, or even just kind of saving their friends. I'm assuming that our current arc is going on during the time that before the children have been killed. And even if it hasn't, you can still see a solid motive of revenge for the Ten Commandments. Anyways guys, that's kind of all I got for this video. If you didn't understand it, if you didn't follow along, that's fine. Just ask me anything in the comments. I'll try my best to explain it. I know that it may be confusing. A lot of this deep theory stuff can be confusing, and even the way I talk can kind of jumble it up a little bit, so I apologize for that. I tried my best to clear it up for you guys, and I did work hard in this video, so I appreciate your feedback. And thanks again, guys. I'll talk to you in the next one. Peace.